Hello everyone and welcome back to another video, more about Roblox tips and tricks, this time Roblox Studio even. So let's just go straight into it. Roblox Studio is such a great platform for any developer, novice or the highest caliber, to really dip their fingers into a great platform which allows you to build almost everything. Limitations are very small nowadays. So let's just get into it. We're going to talk about mainly today how to utilize atmosphere, how to utilize shadows, how to utilize lighting, how to even the simplest things such as how to optimize your meshes, how to optimize your builds. So let's just say we're on our new base plate. And let's say, wow, today I really feel like building a nice little forest. Well, to our luck, Roblox have come out with a forest pack. Let's just insert this. I'll leave the link in the description. And you're thinking, wow, these trees are beautiful. I really want to build an atmosphere around this. So let's just say we're going to grab one of these. And then maybe put a part. And then change this into terrain. By using the terrain to part plugin, which I'll also leave below. So let's just say this is our temporary forest. Let's just duplicate these and then randomly paste them everywhere. So obviously this is a very primitive forest, but you're also thinking, yeah, I love the vibe of this. How can I really make the atmosphere around me replicate what I'm trying to do through these assets? So first of all, we can go into lighting, and what we can do is we can look at ambient, and we're thinking, wow, I really want the hue of this to be green because I want to replicate the greenness of the leaves, of how fresh everything is. So we can make the ambient a little bit greener. You can see if we adjust the ambient lighter or darker, it replicates on like the general lighting. So let's just keep it relatively low and then go a bit green. So it's a little bit greener than before. If we keep undo, you can see like a subtle difference. So now we can move on to brightness. We want it still to be very bright. We still want to see the trees around us. We want to feel like we're walking through a forest. So we're going to leave it at that. We're going to leave color shift as it is. There's no need to touch that. Same with environmental diffuse scales and stuff like that. Outdoor ambient. At the same time as we want to make it bright, we also want to make those shadows very dark, like they are in real life. So let's just make the outdoor ambient very low. We could also, whilst we're here, change the time of day to whatever we want. So when you change the time of day, the sun will obviously change where it is, depending on the latitude that you pick. You can pick any latitude, you can base it on like a real life place. So you could look up a forest near you and be like, hey Google, where is this forest and what's the latitude of this forest? And you can put it in here and it will accurately replicate where the sun is in real life. So let's just leave it at maybe 16 or 17. So you can see the nice shadows reflecting off there now. Let's just put that a little bit lower so it's a bit more realistic. So now, after that, let's think, wow, I really like this global lighting. And now we can really adjust the finer details of the atmosphere. So if we click on atmosphere, you will see properties such as density. So density is basically the amount of particles in the air. So the higher we make it, you can see how fuzzy it gets. So if we're making like a large forest, you can put it as high as you want. So maybe it might be useful to make it a bit higher because you feel more crowded by trees and stuff like that. Or we can make it lower, which means less particles in the air and it's very clear. So let's just maybe put it a little bit higher. We can also use offset, which is, if you look in the distance, you can see the fuzziness. If we go back onto atmosphere, you see the fuzziness between the base plate and the sky. If we increase the offset, It basically is adjusting how the light transmits between the camera and the sky background. So we can set this as high as we want or as low as we want if we want to see, like, if we have a huge map and you don't want to see way in front of you. So let's just leave that where it is mainly. So now we can go onto haze. So haze is basically just the haziness of the atmosphere. So as we increase it, you can see how like based it is on the color. It's very it feels very thick. If we increase the color, if we change the color to something like red, you feel like you're in a different world almost. You feel like you're on Mars or something like that if you got it as red. So what we can do on the haze, say we want to replicate something really lively, like fresh. Let's just maybe put it on like a blue color. And then we can decrease the haze to something like 2, 1. And you can see that it's really like contrasting the colors of the trees and what we're trying to achieve. So maybe let's just decrease that a little bit more. It's very blue. We can also change the decay, which is basically the hue of the atmosphere, basically replicated by the sun based on clock time. So we can change that, or we might not. It doesn't really matter. So we're gonna use decay in this instance, just as like when the sun is moving, it will maybe represent a more purpley color. We can also increase the glare. It's basically the glare around the sun. So let's increase this to maybe half of it, and you can see the fuzziness coming towards us almost. And that's just basically the sun reflecting. You can see it's all around the sun, and then as you move further away, it's all dark still. So let's just maybe leave it like that. So let's move on to bloom. So bloom basically replicates you looking at a very bright light. So if we click on bloom, we can see multiple things we could change: intensity, size, and thresholds. So let's just say we don't want the sun to completely blind us when we look at it. So let's just change that to something like 0.7. Let's just say also that we don't want it to blind us. So let's just make the size a little bit smaller, and same as the threshold. We don't want it to be bright. See, look, if we make it very high, you can see that the brightness kind of decreases. So let's just put it as about, let's just say 1.9. We could also use color correction. So we can go onto lighting, press the plus button, and add in color correction effect. So here we can use brightness, contrast, saturation, and tint color. This is where you can really mess around with what you want to do. So let's just say we want the contrast to be somewhat between the grass, the atmosphere, and everything like that. If we make it lower, you can see the ambient is really shining through in that regard. Let's just say we want to make it somewhat of a contrast. So maybe half. You can see really fresh and it's very contrasting. Maybe we'll saturation up a little bit. So if we put it on very high, you can see that those colors are very vibrant and really coming out. So what we want to do is not put this too high. Maybe 0.1 or 0.2. I'm going to put 0.1. And we can also change the tint color, and that's just basically changing it's basically the atmosphere and the tint of the whole skybox. So let's just leave that on default. We can also use depth of field to kind of put more emphasis on what's right in front of the player rather than looking way beyond where they should be looking. So what we can do is go on depth of field, and let's just say we want to enable depth of field, and we want to really the player to be focusing on what's right in front of them. So this stuff. I'm just butting in here on editing, and I'll discuss this later, but if you want a real-time view of your edits on depth of view, you're better off going into the game and navigating to lighting and changing it in real time. You cannot really see it in Roblox Studio, like the preview window, that well unless you're in the game and on higher graphic settings. It just doesn't reflect very well. So you'll see me making changes during this, and there'll be literally nothing happening. But as I will discuss later on, you need to go into the game really to see any changes that take effect. So prior to this section, I think I should make the explanation a bit clearer about depth of field effect. So this graph is really good on the developer wiki. So this is the player, the camera of the player. And the focus distance is the distance like they're focused on, like the camera's focused on. So the near intensity would be the intensity of the blur in relation to the in-focus radius. So you've got focus distance, but you also have an in-focus radius around that. And that in-focus radius basically decides what's in focus around that focus distance. So if you look at the in-focus distance in relation to the far intensity, you can see on this curve, as you get further away from the in-focus radius, the more intense the blur becomes. So we can effectively make the user's eyes basically focus on what's in front of us more than what's further away. So on depth of field, we can do enable it first. Far intensity. So far intensity is basically a blur of everything far away is. So how intense it is. So let's just make that just a little bit. Maybe just keep it on default. So 0.75. Then we can go on to focus distance, which is the distance away from the camera where objects are in focus. Let's just make that default as well. You can also change the in-focus radius, which is basically distance away from the focus distance where no blur is implied. So let's maybe change that to like 50 or something. And maybe let's just change up the focus distance to something like 25. And then near intensity is the near field blur, so how blurry it is towards you, where you are. So let's just change that to 0.5. You might not see anything right now. So let's just go on to sun rays. Sun rays are very pivotal for how realistic your builds look. So let's just think, how intense do we want these sun rays? You may not be able to see them right now, but you will in game. Let's just make everything anchored. Okay, everything is anchored. So look on sun rays. Intensity, I want them somewhat intense. Let's just maybe put them up a little bit. The spread of the sun rays, we want them to spread pretty far. We want a lot of sun rays through this forest. So let's put them up like that. And let's just look in game. In the game, there's like a large emphasis on the blur around you, and that really makes you fix onto what's right in front of you rather than looking all around you. Yes, you have the sun on your back end, yeah, you will look at that sun, but you're really like looking at the entire picture as a whole and seeing the sun reflecting on what's right in front of you, which really makes you like think that you're really there, and it makes it look really realistic. Yes, your experience might depend on the graphics you got, so anything above 5 graphics, you can really see like the shadows and the sun rays, and then anything below, it's not as realistic for like lower end users. But this kind of like shows the importance of atmosphere. Like I said before, you can either go in game to make these changes, or you can configure Roblox Studio, which can also be very helpful if you are stuck and you want to change stuff very quickly, so like the bloom or something like that. You could also just sit in game and fiddle with this as much as you want, and it should just real time adjust. See, look, so the spread, you can see the spread actively, you can see the intensity actively, so let's just put that back to where it was. Depth of field view, let's just look in the distance for a little bit. You can see the blur effect happening in real time. You can see the focus distance as well. So let's just put myself out of focus distance. That's actually quite a cool effect. So let's just put myself back into focus. Might be helpful. In focus radius, we can also do that. And then near intensity, we can also mess around with that. And that's more to do with our camera. You also play with color correction, bloom, and the atmosphere as well. So let's just go out. And now we're thinking, I really like this. But what if behind all these trees, let's just add more trees. So maybe amongst all this foliage, there's a little house that we want to put behind, and that might have a secret. So let's just make the first wall of the house. Always put your stub movement on 1 or a or 0.1, I would recommend. So let's just say we want a wooden wall, or concrete wall, which is a little bit cracked. And you're thinking, how do I make this wall look cracked? Do I use unions and do something like moving to make it look cracked and then union it? by pressing negate and then pressing union. Well, you can do that. And as long as you're not doing too many of them, they'll be absolutely fine. But you can also do this. Let's just separate them for a minute. And let's go on the free texture website. So textures.com is a really good website for any free textures. So let's just search up crack. And you see all these PBR textures. And then we can see something like this. It's like a cracked wall texture. So we can download this for free if you've got an account. Save. And then we can also change the resolution of the picture as well. And that will also make it a bit less laggy and more optimizing. And now we can go onto our file. So let's just change the file name for one to cracks. Upload that. Insert. And we can put it on our wall. You could also put this just regularly on the union, and that adds that extra little bit of detail onto it. But you could also just literally have a flat wall, and that still gets the same message across that it's cracked and it's weakened. But obviously, as I said before, you can use unions sparingly as long as it's not affecting the performance of the game. Another tip for that is also, if you're using unions, click on the union and then properties, then go to collision. I would always change, as long as you don't want the player jumping over it or it's not affecting the hitbox of it, put it on box. That means the hitbox of it will be the selection of what it is in Roblox Studio, and it will basically mean they don't have to render accurate hitboxes. That decreases some of the lag on it. So there we go, we got our cracked wall. Let's just say now, I want to make a rock in Blender. And I want to place it all around, but I don't know how to effectively optimize it. So let's just say that this is the rock that we import. I think, wow, this rock looks really good, but it's like 200 triangles or something like that. So let's just spam it around everywhere. And then you think to yourself, oh no, I haven't optimized this in Roblox. And then you're looking through this and you're like, oh, I have to go through the collision fidelity of every single mesh and try to calculate the hitboxes and stuff like that. So let's just say it's a rock. We don't need accurate hitboxes for a rock. We need to optimize this rock. So what we can do, if you've pasted tons of rocks everywhere, let's just say hundreds, and you can't be bothered to click through filter workspace and select them all, we can run a script like this in the run a command bit at the bottom. So I'll show you the script. Basically, this script is looking for every mesh part in the workspace which has the same ID as the mesh ID which is set above, and it's going through each and every one of them, selecting it and then changing the collision fidelity to box, which is where it renders the hitbox, which is the selection box in Studio, and changes the render fidelity to automatic. You would want to change the render fidelity to automatic if it's not a fundamental feature of the game. So as you look further away from something which is rendered automatic, this also depends on how many triangles it's got. So if we set it to automatic, as farther we get away, the less you can see it rendered in. So I didn't explain this very well either. So when you set your value of render fidelity to automatic, you can see on the developer wiki here, it will dynamically control solid models and mesh parts level of detail depending on its distance from the camera. And this is from the distance above. So less than 250 studs away, the render fidelity will still be high. So you can still see the level of detail. Any more than that, 250 to 500, it'll be medium. So you can still see some detail, but it'll be a bit more like triangular. And then 500 or more studs away, it'll be very, very flat and very low detail. And basically, when you enable automatic render fidelity, this is what it enables, this table right here. So that basically helps overall game performance and rendering. Take it that this isn't a good use case, but it's flatter than the other stuff, which is precise fidelity. So the whole point is it flattens and makes it more optimized for the user. So we're thinking, yeah, I want to change all these rocks to box and automatic fidelity. So we can get the ID of this rock. Copy it. Put it in mesh ID. Copy this. Go on to run a command. Paste it. And press enter. And you can see in the output, which you can also get to through view, that successful fidelity has been applied to 9 assets, which is all my rocks which I've placed it around. So we can look on the rocks now. You can see the render fidelity is automatic. You can see the collision fidelity is now box on all of them. And that's just an easy way if you forget to, or I've only just discovered this way of optimizing your meshes, or any unions even you can use this on. You can change the render fidelity, stuff like that. This is just a great way to really optimize it. I think the final thing we're going to go on to is more of how to optimize your 3D models. So we've created this beautiful atmosphere, we've created a crack wall, and we want to put a little build behind this. So let's just say we want to put a shed behind this. So maybe we hop onto Blender. So I'll touch on this before the 3D model begins. But I just want to say, when you're 3D modeling, you really need to pinpoint the use case for the building. So let's just say you want the shed that we're building right now to just be a filler building. There is absolutely no need for that filler building to have 4 separate walls. You can just make something like this. So let's just say this is the platform, and we were gonna make it so the user cannot enter. It's just a filler building. So there's absolutely no need to construct your 3D model like this. Because at the end of the day, this is going to be a filler model. So if we put it up, it's literally just wasted space in the middle. And then furthermore, you have all these wasted triangles. So you can literally make the same effect by just doing this. It's 12 triangles versus 48 triangles. So you can see that's where you can save triangles. And yeah, you might want particular details, like on a wall. So you might want a window here, let's just say. You can do the exact same thing on here. You can put a window here. And maybe you don't want a window on this side. That just doesn't matter. You don't have to edit that side. You can just edit this side. Then you can move it in. And look, you got your window. And then you can edit whatever you want on this side and the other side. So that's just how you save triangles. That's just how you basically save them. You have to think of the use case. So if you want the player to enter the building, then obviously this use case is the best use case. But you've always got to remember, and I think I'll touch on this in later on, these faces are hidden. The player will never see them. So there is absolutely no point of keeping them there. Just delete them. There is absolutely no change in the structure of the building. So we can make this a new door now. Let's put the things on. Let's make edges, faces even. And you can see, we got a door now. And the player can go inside. So what I'm trying to say is you can really optimize your buildings based on the purpose of why you're building it. So if you're entering it, then yes, this is absolutely fine to do, but you've got to remember to optimize your builds. So even you can see when you pull it out as well, the bottom faces, you're never going to see them either. So what's the point of keeping them? Just delete them. And that's how you silently almost optimize your builds, like passively. So filler buildings, absolutely just use one wall or one cube in this instance. Buildings that you're going to walk into, remember to optimize by deleting faces that won't be seen by the player, and you'll be all good to go. So what we can do on Blender, so let's just say we want a little garden shed. We can use pure ref. If we haven't got a second monitor, we can use this to hold references. So let's just search up shed. And then let's just select this one. And then we can drag it into here and we can see our reference in real time whilst we're 3D modeling. So here's a shed I've made before. And you're thinking, how do I optimize this? So we're looking at this. If we decrease this a little bit, you're thinking, all these sides connect to this post. So if we remove these posts, the user is not going to see any of these faces. Therefore, they are wasted triangles. The player is rendering them for no reason, because they're going to be hidden behind these pillars. So if we go on to our wall here, we can select all these faces, holding shift with face select, and what we simply can do is delete them. I would also recommend in the stage turning on back face culling, because then you can see which faces you've deleted very easily. And we can also delete the faces on the other side. And we can do that for all the sides. And then in total, so let's just look at how many triangles we save per side. So we can see here, we are selecting 12 faces, which is 48 vertices and 48 edges. So 102 triangles just from that. So say that's 204 triangles every side. 204 times 4. 816 triangles we are just saving from deleting the edges of this wall. And this will make absolutely no difference, because if we put the post back, look inside, you won't be able to see it anyway. So that's one of the great ways to optimize. You can also do this on the back of stuff which won't be seen as well. So we've got some hinges. Just delete the face on the back. The user is never going to see them, so just delete the face on the back. That's one of the greatest ways to optimize your meshes. I'd also recommend not using too much of bevel. You can get across realism without using bevel. So you can see here I have used bevel, but the thing is with this, you needed bevel to make it clear that this is differentiated from this part of the shed. So if we look at the thing in real life, you can see it's differentiated. And the bevel kind of differentiates that. And bevel has its use cases, but overusing bevel is one of the worst ways you can make your meshes and your build very laggy. So let's just say we're going to add bevel onto this, and you can see on the triangles, yes, they're admittedly very high because this is another project that I'm working on. So if we click on bevel, you see straight away that is another 200 for literally just nothing. And the thing is, on Roblox as well, and on Blender, what you can do, right click, press shade smooth, you'll see it's gone a bit fluffy almost. And you'll think to yourself, what's she making me do? Press add modifier, and then edge split, and then change the split angle until it is faded away. And that is as much as you would get with another bevel modifier. So let's just put both next to each other. So let's just shave that, take the modifier off of this, and add a bevel onto it again. So this is the more advanced bevel. Apply it, shade smooth. It looks almost exactly the same. There's very minuscule visual difference, and the player won't be looking that closely to see it. You can always almost argue that the one with just the smooth edge modifier looks a bit cleaner than the one with extra bevels, because it looks like the edges are meeting in the correct areas, because that's how you basically modeled it rather than based on the bevel. So that's also another way to easily make your meshes look a bit more smoother and cleaner. So another thing we can do, so let's just say we're making like a pole or something. When we add in our circle, Blender always default to 32 vertices. We don't want that on Roblox. As I've shown before, we can use smooth edge modifiers and the shade smooth function to make stuff look smooth. So I would say maximum you ever want to use is 12 to 16. And most use cases, you would get away with 6 to 8. So let's just put 8 because we do want something rounded and not hexagonal. So let's just put 8. And just say we want a basic pole. So let's just make it a bit smaller. And we got a nice pole. In contrast, if we add our circle, add it up to 32 or 16 or whatever, so let's just add a 16 and a 32. Yes, the circle, I do acknowledge, is not as accurate. However, it is a minuscule difference. So let's just make these poles. And then let's make these smooth. So let's right click them all and press shade smooth. Can you tell the difference? Maybe if you look up here, and maybe you can look at the faces, you can see the difference between the 8. But the 16 and 32 is very small unless you look very closely. And what we're thinking of, well, when we're using the Roblox platform, because it's not as optimized for lower end devices, we're thinking it's more useful for us to use lower vertex poles or circles instead of higher vertex because it will run better on the user's machine. So we want to utilize like an 8 vertex circle instead of a 16 or 32 because 16 or 32 because it's such a minuscule difference that it doesn't really make sense to use anything higher unless you're doing something really detailed where people will see it. So in this instance, yes, you can see there's a horrible shadow down there. You can use a shade, edge split modifier even, get rid of that shadow. On the other hand, you can also use auto smooth on normals, which does basically the same thing. I like using the modifier more because it applies to more stuff and you don't have to randomly go through everything. So there's literally absolutely no difference between these unless you look very closely. As well as that, you can look at the triangle difference as well. So let's just look at this pole. 28 triangles for an 8 vertex. 16 vertex, 60. 32, 124. You can see just how many triangles you are losing and saving by choosing the lower vertex option. And it's literally a minimal difference. So in conclusion, really, I cannot emphasize any more of how important it is to utilize atmosphere and Roblox functions to make your places more realistic, to make them more intriguing for a user, as well as making them more optimized. Yes, you can use stuff such as surface appearance, you can use 3D modeling, stuff like that. But you've also got to nail the basics. Atmosphere, that very induces realism. You can use unions, you can use parts and stuff like that, as long as they are optimized for the task that they are doing. So in terms of 3D modeling, using low vertex options, also very important. Using a script like this, if you have lots of mesh parts in your places and they don't have the correct hitbox or render fidelity, you can change it that way. But that's basically the basics of Roblox Studio, some tips and tricks even, and Blender for the most part.